Hello everyone and welcome back. That's right, it's another round of pop culture annihilation with Critic-Alley. This time our victim is the 2018 horror film Slender Man. The story starts at sunrise in the parking lot of a small shopping center. Like many great stories do, sometimes with a hangover. Then a montage of storefronts, such as Dylan's Pizza, a nameless venue still full of boxed merchandise, and a meeting of suspiciously out-of-place shopping carts. They had Village Market written upon them, as they stood silently in a football huddle afront of an oriental market, like a gang of freezing 90s stoners. They don't belong there, Screen Gems! Get a new prop guy, Screen Gems! I shouted into an empty room alone, hoping they would receive it through the power of the universe. Or the NSA. Either one. None of those tiny stores were big enough for stupid friggin' shopping carts anyway. Jump to a school. The track specifically. Anybody out there shudder when I said track? Like PTSD stemming from the dark days that you knew you were gonna fail PE. When you were young and weird about your body so you didn't dress down in the proper attire. This may be the scariest thing we see. I was immediately proven wrong when I came face to face with viral cat videos! First 5 minutes? Really, guys? This must be a huge contributing factor to their hopefully gruesome deaths. It's during this self-defecating scene that we are introduced to our protagonist group. Chloe, the shy one, Ren, the pouty-faced free spirit, Katie, the troubled fiery redhead, and Hallie, the main character who never responds appropriately to anything, leaving you to have to cry, "No, don't go that way, Hallie." You know, classic power crew. In response to the video, the Ginger expresses that she would have preferred to see the cat explode.
It'd be cuter if he exploded at the end. Meow.
Exposing her true nature and how those bright hues are the fires of heck, draped like a shawl across her head, clearly hiding her horns. I have to ask, are all gingers embracing the soul-stealing stereotype?
You know, did you know that pilgrims used to think sneezing meant you were expelling demons?
Cause this one is
What? That's why I never sneeze.
hard.
I want to keep them all. It's my soul.
They saunter aimlessly through the halls, bickering over which would be better, staying 10 or 30 forever. Correct answer is neither of those. Before we are introduced to 3 characters that at first glance seem like a good build for a protagonist male group, but ended up being so lackluster they only had a handful of lines between the few. I was almost disappointed. Then I remembered, wait just a minute. This is Slender Man, a movie clearly about girl power. Get those babbling baboons back in their cages. The shot is over. They make a dude bros in their natural habitat joke before slinking up with all the given grace and respect that they actually give the baboons on Animal Planet. They share a little bit of dialogue, and fortunately that's the end of them that we have to see for a considerable amount of time, because now we have to fast forward to dinner. Trust me, you didn't miss anything anyway. The dining room is lit just as bright and cheerfully as all the serious scenes from The Godfather, and the family's actually eating bread, which is kind of a surprise considering how much movie food is made out of styrofoam and how often eating is this weird taboo thing, which is either bold or a glaring ignorance of this trope. You decide. The power is yours. Hallie's sister Lizzie desperately tries in vain to get to go out and have girls' night, only moments before the pouty face with the crazy eyes shows up and whisks Hallie off into the night. The girls' night. The place to be is Katie's blazingly problematic residence. They sneak past the poorly casted amalgamation of every stereotyped abusive alcoholic father you've been subjected to in the media for the past 20 years. As well as found in a similarly drunk coma on the couch of at least one of your childhood friends. After they secret squirrel through the degenerate single wide, they walk into what appears to be a closet, only to next be seen in their assertively That 70s Show inspired basement. Only this one is bunker edition, with everything a conspiracy theorist needed to ride out the 2012 Rapture event that we barely survived through. So it's more like a panic room, hide under the floorboard from the Nazis kind of vibe, instead of the preferred 70s stoner comedy thing. So is everybody owning driving a mobile routinely dig little basements into the ground beneath it like this? Or is it just low-budget B-movie directors? Is this weird to anyone else but me? I thought maybe it's just a weird-looking house on the outside, but no, it's in a trailer park with other trailers. At 6 minutes and 37 seconds, we have the first mention of our creepy cryptid in question. Like any sensible Gen Z, they immediately convene with Lord Google for answers. And as anybody whose deity comes with a search bar can tell you, there are many. Among your average rhetoric of WTF, they find a source with satisfying information. The stories are, according to fake internet profiles, that he is creepy yet calm, and he comforted and horrified us. Which sounds like a two-word summary for Disney movies. At first, he comforted us. Then we realized the underlying messages, and he horrified us. They find a video link that is legit just a black box with a red play button on it, and then they make a classy, oh wait, maybe it's a Russian hacker joke about it. Spooky Text introduces our Slender tale. Those who hear the 3 bells toll accept his invitation. When you hear the first, you must keep your eyes closed, keeping words unspoken. If one wants to hear, you must listen close, for they are soft and distant. With eyes still closed and mind wide open, clear your thoughts and await the second, opening your eyes only when you've heard the third. Then we are force-fed a fast-forward, seizure-inducing, scene-skipping session eerily reminiscent to the early 2000s horror film, The Ring. Only this one ups the ante with a whole lot of Illuminati. Which is perfect when a little Illuminati just won't do. They mostly have an appropriate response, which is fear. Of course, our little wildcat needs to know more, but Hallie straight up falls in love with MC Slens. Not the cute fairy tale go to the ball kind of love. The kind people locked in closets too long develop. A terrifying, illogical one. We know this from the following dream sequence of her wandering around in the woods, only to have a precious little slenderling moving its adorable little tendrils of darkness inside her tummy before shoving its way out. What a festive gender reveal that's gonna be. It's just a party ball filled with whatever black goo they used in the last Venom movie. The same stuff your grandpa coughs up as he lights another cigarette on oxygen. You're a madman, Pop Pop, and you're killing Grams with stress. We cut to a week later and the Scream Queens are on a field trip to a colonial burial ground. Hooray! One that, as described by the teacher, was famously given to the town by Thomas Clifton in 1674. Although my research tells me that Thomas Clifton gave it to the Religious Society of Friends in 1675. Now, while the Society of Friends sounds like a name unanimously rejected by every member of the Goonies, the Little Rascals, and even Stephen King's The Losers Club during the filming of each movie, Sandlot literally saw it was one of the last available names and said, screw that, we'd rather just be named after an abandoned lot next to an old junkyard. And the plot was cemented. It actually refers to way back at the start of the Quaker expansion. Probably because Society of Friends sounds a lot more inviting than the dead-eyed, stone-faced man on the oatmeal container that we now associate the term with. Good thinking, George Fox, founder of the group. The movie takes place in Massachusetts. The cemetery, on the other hand, is in Rhode Island. Those unfamiliar with either of these two small states will be relieved to know that they're right next to each other. Katie, at this point, is a little spacey. No, not Kevin. That wouldn't have fooled anybody. And she's hardly responsive to anyone. Even when they get her attention, she only applies in grunts and shrugs. The girls continue, and next time they turn their backs, she's gone. They launch a search party to find her. These people take No Child Left Behind very seriously, and keep the bus parked there all night with search parties. Back in my day, if you went on the bus on time, you might as well get comfortable because you live there now. The school would just file your residence and forward all your notes and homework to the theme park that they left you at. Thankfully, Shamu wasn't territorial. I must say, these policies should have cut all that kidnapped by supernatural beings stuff right out. We never got killed by slashes, set off curses, or even angered ghosts, and we went on field trips to to Alcatraz. After they finish not finding her, we are taken back to Hallie and Lizzie's place. Lizzie thinks Katie went off with a guy, and Katie's messaging her trying to find her when they hear a sudden noise from the other room. Hallie demonstrates the size of her lady balls when she tells Lizzie to stay put and then wanders off into the darkness to investigate the sound by herself, unarmed. Even the Scooby-Doo crew wouldn't go alone, and if they had no other choice, they would at least grab a large ornate vase from the foreground to bash the noise with. After several prolonged shots of her feet, we are left wondering if Tarantino is lurking about, and we find the culprit. There's a large shadow perusing the DVD collection until Hallie makes herself obvious. Then the shadow gives chase as she races up the stairs. The orchestra slams its brakes as she locks her door and the pounding stops. The voice eerily switches to sobs and calls out Katie, questionably, as if he was surprised to bump into her at a grocery store. Where do you think you are, man? Now here is a bit of advice. If you find someone in your house who chases you up the stairs to an unnerving score, scaring you so badly that you call the police, do not trust them because they know your friend's name. That should not ease your mind. The scary theme died down, but that's a classic trick. He was literally just trying to Wreck-It Ralph his way through your door moments ago. So of course, Hallie opens the door, prompting us all to be like, "No, Hallie, what are you doing?" We see the assailant is Katie's dad, just as drunk and belligerent as he possibly could be prior to this scene. He goes from crying about it, to interrogating her, to manhandling her and her doorway in a matter of moments. She shoves him down and leaves him there to sob in the dark until the police come and haul his craziness away. The next day at school, there are posters everywhere about the missing teenager and the equally important jazz recital coming up. We value all types of art around here. The troubled trio decides they're going to take matters into their own hands and find their missing friend. And of course, the best plan they have? Some good old B&E. Best place to break in would be at Katie's house. See how you like it, prick. So they send the pouty lip with the wild eyes, normally known as Ren, in to distract him as the other two go cartoonishly sneak in through the back. They break into the missing Ginger's room and they find an eerie amount of Slender art. She is worse than a middle schooler, dreamily writing Mrs. Slenderman all across her notebooks and your desk. They break into Katie's sig stash and steal her secret laptop. As they are going through it, they find mass amounts of videos and stories pertaining to Slender Man. They also find messages between Katie and this person known as AlleyCat93. They decide to message Alley-Cat, who isn't surprised one bit that Katie has gone missing. She tells him about some ritual to unveil to him, which sounds more like the title of an erotic novel than a way to get your friend back. Unless that's what happens in chapter 2. I didn't finish reading that one. So they are supposed to go deep into the woods and sacrifice some valued possessions to him. They place the items on a stump, sit around him, and then put a blindfold on, because you're really not supposed to look into dude's face. It really messes you up. Same way looking into the eyes of Medusa will mess you up. One look, and then blam! Insanity. It is as mentally damaging as a Nickelback concert. Before long, Chloe lifts her blindfold and comes face to face with Slender Nimoy. It's the first time we actually see him. The horror money shot. So let's take a moment to discuss our supernatural friend here. From what the movie shows us, he is made out of trees and darkness. His presence is often introduced by the slow snapping of wood. The way he steps out of trees is similar to how amoebas split. It kinda looks painful. As a man of reformed taste myself, I honestly appreciate his fancy suit, as well as his completely blank wood grain pattern of a face. It's a stylish look. Chloe screams and runs off into the woods so the others chase after her. After a couple panicked moments, she re-emerges from the shadows claiming that she just got scared, nothing happened. Which is the equivalent of a woman saying she's fine.
I'm fine.
And you should never trust that.
I'm fine.
Without proper questioning, they just leave because nobody knows how to deal with anything. Now we're hanging out with Chloe alone in her room listening to music, trying to calm down from today's slending events, when she gets a weird call from an unknown number. It's a video chat. So obviously being a little weirded out, she goes and looks out the window and sees nothing. She looks back at her phone and watches as McSlendy takes the most boring video tour of her house. It gets to just about her doorway, so she pops open the door thinking she could surprise it, and there's nothing there. We, the audience, though, see the shadow slip into her room and materialize to attack her. He puts his hands on her throat and strangles her. She stumbles backwards, looks over into a mirror, and notices that she's strangling herself. Which reminds me of that person that everybody who has met that bruises themselves for attention. The next day, we get a short scene of Hallie walking with one of the guys back from Act 1. Calls him Tom, but we all know he doesn't have a real name, cause like I said earlier, girl power. She's just humoring him. At any rate, he asks her out. For a split second, she catches Mr. Tall, Dark, and Faceless in the background, and then agrees to go on this date with Tom just to not seem crazy and distracted about the thing that she saw. Then we jump over to the library where Ren is doing some Slender research. She finds a book on electromagnetic waves written by Jeremy Woodward, who, fun fact, is not an author, but the production designer of the movie. This would not have bothered me so much if it wasn't open and directly quoted from, but I'm getting ahead of my shelf. We're still at the library. We see her thumbing through the book as tension-multiplying music swells in the background, and it blends with this tree snapping Slender sounds that we've become so accustomed to. When suddenly... librarian jump scare! Which is variably terrifying based on your school experience. Then the lights go out. She instinctively grabs for her phone, but can't turn the light on or dial out to reach Hallie. The walls start creaking and slamming like the ghost of an angry drunk that can't find the keys to his Bugatti. She panics and runs, but on every turn she finds the ghoulish gentleman. Next on her territory, she tries in vain to run down the forever expanse that is the Collider hallway. Until she can go no further and she collapses. Slenderfer Lopez kneels down and caresses her face sweetly, before covering it with a papier-mâché likeness of his own facelessness, sparking panicked grunts and muffled screams that last almost long enough to suffocate her. When the spooky librarian grabs her and asks what's wrong, breaking the spell, giving back her face, and cementing that this is a primarily psychological issue. Because let's face it, libraries haven't been magical since Miss Frizzle quit her community outreach there. Later that night, the last two functioning members of Slens in the City decide to go check on their shy compatriot and see why she isn't answering her phone. They sneak up to the house as we once again have our scene punctuated by the lone dog. Pretty sure the only one who's in the entire neighborhood. They sit beneath the window making plans as the crescendo swells to announce the arrival of Miss Chloe. Only she is a vague shell of her former self, eyes all dug up with a sickly yellow tone as she stares past him like some rage-filled curmudgeon whose only life goal at this point is to find that cat who continues to defecate in his flower gardens. Rightfully horrified, they race off down the street to discuss Ren's fear and Hallie's denial. Ren says they have to do something about this, while Hallie says she doesn't have time to play pretend because she has real things to focus on, like going on a date with Tom. Tom is cute and dates are fun. So she leaves Ren there to contemplate her life and go get ready to go on her date. She gets to Tom's house, he welcomes her inside and casually mentions that his parents are out of town. What a coincidence! As they are getting comfortable, she spots a record player. Some of you might not even be familiar with this archaic antiquity. He blows it off by saying it's his dad's. But we know the truth. We know his father wasn't born in the 1800s. He is either a vampire or a classical music fan who sold his soul to Little Richard so that he can enjoy his rad tunes forever. You'll keep on rocking, but you're dead within. So they're sitting on the brown couch making out to sweet riffs when the music skips and startles her lightly. She looks off bothered. And he says, "Come here." And when she looks back, he starts jerking and flipping his head around like the Exorcist girl with onset Parkinson's disease, strung out on well over the lethal amount of methamphetamines. So much meth that the world around him is a shaking, stuttering mess. Holy ha! I laughed so hard for 5 minutes straight that I had to pause the movie, get up, and go void my bladder. I mean, come on. The monkey face? The lip slapping sound in the last one is really what got me, man. She screams and kicks him off, and he's immediately like, dude, I didn't do anything. What happened? Because unlike us, he didn't just watch that low-budget nonsense. So they stop make-out time and have some tea to discuss the recent slendings. Tom accuses Alley Cat of being some weird dude in a van, which honestly feels like an irrelevant jab. The person wasn't trying to lure them into said van. He was warning them about potential danger. To be real, if someone says, don't go that way, there's a good chance you'll die. I'm going to take that into consideration as I decide which direction I'm going to go. It shouldn't matter if the person was a skeevy pervert unless the solution is jumping into his windowless van. The last half hour is a jumbled mess. The next morning, Tom is bruised and bonkers in biology class, and he refuses to talk to anybody. They are dissecting eyes, which feels appropriate. After everything they saw, I'd probably want to dig some eyes out too. Next, we watch Hallie try to message AlleyCat93 3 separate occasions before being informed that the account has been terminated. Which is weird to me, because where I come from, if an account is terminated, you won't be able to find it to message in the first place. Hallie hears and follows an imaginary Katie out into the woods, because of course Hallie does. No, don't go that way, Hallie. She plays hide and seek with Slendy before waking up in her bed feeling sick. She watches the world shake before she sees Mini Slen start tearing his way out of her tummy again. And then she wakes up again. Somebody grab a friggin' top already. We can't trust when the dreams end. We find out that she really woke up that last time to the agonizing screams of her sister. Now she's scared for a whole new reason. Lizzie is having what appears to be an epileptic episode while her family tries to do everything they can to help her. You can hear her father saying, I'm doing the best I can, which is the plea of a man clearly losing his mind and not something that you regularly say to anyone. That's something you say to yourself, which is one of the saddest things. This man didn't go messing around with cursed YouTube videos, yet he may suffer arguably some of the worst pain in the whole movie. So they get Lizzie stable at the hospital, and Hallie wanders off to text Tom and take a tour of the hospital because of course she does. And of course, it's a slow motion walk around the place. Who types like that? So she just wanders about watching people's faces shift until she finds a tall doctor. He's walking slow. She's walking slow. It goes slower. And we are faced with the truth. Her crippling fear of tall people, known as gigantosophobia, a real documented fear which generally stems from a traumatic incident involving an unusually tall person. Like when your stupid brother Steve won't stop jumping out behind things and scaring you. I'll never forgive you for that. After another, much more revealing ring sequence, we find out that she's back in the room. Did she leave? Is there a tall doctor? Did she even text Tom? Lizzie comes to in a screaming fit with her only discernible words being, he had no face, as they wheel her away. Hardcore Hallie's theme music begins. She gets into Lizzie's computer and finds the same slender fonted windows that everybody involved has, and a video of her walking out into the woods with Ren, who aims the camera at herself at a really weird, awkward angle and says, you have to sacrifice something you love, staring blankly forward. There isn't even time to make fun of how dumb that whole shot is from conception to execution, because Hallie just got to Ren's house. She pushes her way into Ren's house, goes up the stairs to her room, finds all sorts of slender art on the wall, and her outside dangling on the edge of the window getting ready to jump. Of course, Hallie rips her back inside and gets her to admit that she took her out there, but says it was Lizzie's idea. Ren gets the slender call and video tour as he slowly snakes his way through the house. Hallie decides she's done with that noise and opens the door real quick to confront him. Doesn't see anything, so she slams the door back closed, runs in the room, looks over at Ren just in time to see the tree reach in and grab her and pull her out. Haha! It was just a red herring the whole time. He was gonna possess the tree and yank her out by her short hairs. And finally, we get Hallie walking into the woods again. But this time, she's basically walking through the video that we watched earlier, so you know it's coming to a close. After the montage that we saw, she seems convinced that the only way to win and save Lizzie is to give in and become the Slender Bride, which honestly seems like it's what she wanted to begin with. She comes face to face with him, whispers, take me, and then runs away? Very misleading. But if she hadn't tucked tail and ran, we would have got that awesome scene of Slim Slendy tearing through the forest like Doc Ock on a warpath. Plus, she has to run to the tree that she gets sucked into at the very end. Oh yeah, spoiler alert. Hollywood finishes her arbor morph screaming, "Lizzie!" in 6 different people's voices, which is just strong enough to wake her from her coma. The movie closes out with a Lizzie voiceover monologue that I think she had to have written herself because it's just bad. She literally ends it with, "You know."
It's all spreading his word, you know?
Wow, guys, that was nuts. So looking back, we saw several mental illnesses reacting with each other in really curious ways, especially when they've been stoked by fear. This was a taboo movie idea that received criticism because of its similarities to real-life occurrences. 2 12-year-old girls brutally stabbed a classmate over 19 times. They intended to murder her in the name of Slender Man, while claiming to be connected to several other supernatural creatures of similar origins, and we'll discuss those later, seems to stem from an online series of tales back in 2009. It shows in detail the power belief has over your mind and its ability to spread like a virus, which is why we should always apply healthy levels of skepticism to our daily lives. If you can defeat fear with laughter, then you win. Critically yours, The Fox.